Greetings everybody, welcome back to another video of Satsang, Sadhana, and Sangha, where I talk about principles related to yoga and the path of self-realization through this particular wisdom science. I feel inspired today to talk to you guys about some of the principles of the practice that we use as a framework for the trainings with Keepers of the Earth. And I use these principles in my personal practice and have been applying them for many years with great results and benefits. And I want to share how they intersect and where they're coming from, and how these principles are part of the larger system known as Tantra. And so these principles are the Pancha Maha Bhutas, the five great elements. Pancha means five, Maha, great, Bhuta, element. And the technique known as Bhuta Shuddhi, which means the purification of the Bhuta, of the elements, is a technique that is revered in many various tantric texts. And it refers to the process of what we call purifying our relationship to each of these elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. And the understanding that we come to is based on the view, the tantric metaphysical view or cosmological view, that everything we see and experience is a manifestation of different combinations of these elements. And so the idea is that in order to enter into a more accurate relationship, or a more aligned relationship to the supreme reality, right, the infinite light or the infinite consciousness from which everything becomes, including my personal experience, one must approach and build a relationship to the various stages of that infinite consciousness and light as it descends and fractalizes into the different forms that it takes. And so viewing it from that perspective helps us orient and understand these are not elements that we learn about in chemistry class, but the Pancha Mahabhutas are rather sort of like configurations of the light, or the causal principle, right? The consciousness that is beyond all form, and the elements are the ways that that light configures itself into becoming, for example. And so earth represents the solid state of elements or matter. Water represents the liquid state of elements or matter. Fire represents the transformation between states. So, for example, ice is solid water, or water that has moved towards being more earth, so to speak, and that water can then evaporate into gas, into air. And fire is what is responsible for the transformation or the transition between those states of matter. So fire, of course, there's the elemental fire, or rather the fire itself burning, but also we're referring to the principle of fire. So I want you to think about that, right? Being that which causes things to change their state. Okay? And so this principle, the reason I'm saying this is because these principles are alive in our body, and we want to become aware of how each of the principles are superimposed in our form, in our body, in our physical body, in our emotional, energetic bodies, our mind. All of these things are influenced by what I'm talking about. Air is, of course, the state of matter when it is in its gaseous form. And then space is the element that comprises the matrix in which things can manifest. And so once all five of these elements have been absorbed within us and then sublimated, right? The understanding is that the earth element resides at the root, at Muladhara chakra, and then moving up to Svadhisthana, the sacral chakra, water, moving up to Manipura chakra, the solar plexus, fire, moving up to the heart, Anahata, air, moving up to the throat, the Shuddha, space, and then moving up from this fifth chakra at the throat to the Agya chakra, the command center, third eye, which is light or consciousness. And so all five of the elements have been absorbed in themselves and moving up, and then they, once they have all been absorbed internally, then at the level of the third eye, the individual consciousness that has been configured into the form that it takes through the elements is released from the bondage of the material world, and the soul can ascend into its ultimate form, which is to be one with the source. And that's what's represented by the Sahasrara chakra. And so each of these elements that I just walked through, earth, water, fire, air, space, moving up the spine in each of the chakras, we are discussing different aspects of practice or sadhana and techniques that lead us to an increasing an awareness of what that element is and what it's doing, what its function is, and how it manifests for us. And in doing so, build a more accurate relationship to that aspect of reality. And so let me just use an example. We know, based on just deduction, that there are many layers of our being, right? There's many layers. There's an emotional layer, there's a mental layer, there's a physical layer of sensation, and that even corresponds to different levels of tissue in the body. We have flesh, or we have bones, we have flesh, we have blood, we have lymph, we have nervous system, we have an endocrine system, we have a respiratory system, we have a circulatory system, ranging from dense to subtle, like the denseness of bones. Bones are much more solid or earthly than, for example, the subtle impulses of the neurons in our brain, which are much subtler and more on the spectrum of space, for example. And so we have all of these things manifesting in us at different levels. And what I was saying earlier is that through practice, we learn to align with the different frequencies of light, so to speak, and influence different systems of our body. And so as I was saying, for example, if we are working with our asanas and primarily with the physical body, the muscles, the bones, the tendons, the ligaments, then we are predominantly working with the earth element, right? That makes sense. This is a gross simplification, but just to kind of show or demonstrate what I'm talking about, you can kind of contemplate that. On the other hand, if we're working primarily with pranayama or the breath, then we are working more with, for example, the air element. We get to the stillness of meditation, we're working with the space element and beyond in consciousness. And so, yeah, like I said, it's a gross oversimplification, but just a way to kind of see what I'm pointing to. And with this elemental model of the Pancha Mahabhutas and an understanding of the chakra system, we can begin to look at the vast network, or excuse me, there's so many techniques. The technology of yoga is one in which, with study and practice, we learn to find the right tools to do the job, so to speak. And so it's like building a house, right? We can't build a house with just a hammer and a nail. Like, we have to have many different tools and things to and skill sets even to finish the building of the house. Well, when it comes to sadhana and spiritual attainment, or this idea of self-realization and discovering who we are truly at our essence, it's the same idea. We have to approach it in the same fashion, learning the different tools needed, the different skill sets needed, and the right application of those tools and skill sets to then finish the build of the house, so that we can arrive at our destination. And that, I think, is an important thing to kind of point out, because many people in the yogic path, or some of the people that I've talked to at least, end up stuck at different stages and end up being focused on one particular dimension or tool, when in reality, having a more holistic view of what's needed to progress is can be very helpful. And so I just wanted to introduce that for you today, talking about the Pancha Maha Bhutas, the elemental model, the chakra system, this coming from Tantra and the idea of Bhuta Shuddhi, the purification of the elements, and how this intersects and weaves into Hatha Yoga. And so, yeah, I'll just leave it there. This video will also introduce the upcoming course that I'll be doing, and so if anything that I shared here was helpful or useful or intriguing, I'll be diving into these subjects with practices and with examples in a much more focused way over the course of 6 weeks that I'll be teaching this online course on Tantrik Hatha Yoga. So please get in touch if that's inspiring to you, and if not, all good. Maybe this video helps to spark the fire there for home practice. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you soon.